Hello book friends, welcome to Uncommon Reader. I'm Daniela. I hope you're doing well and surviving the heat. And we made it to my final spring reads wrap up, and I'm truly happy I'm done with this. I have to confess, 3 of these books I'm going to talk about today are June reads, but technically they do fall in the spring timeline because I've read them in early June. So I'm gonna start with one of my favorite reads in the spring, a buddy read that I did with Tracy at Tracy Nordic Lights. And I'm so glad that Tracy gracefully embraced this read, her first reading of Elsa Morante, the Italian writer, which I adore. And we read Arturo's Island. Thank you so much also, because our conversations via email are always so enriching, exploring the depths of the character personalities, and also, talking about other things beside the books. We've been developing quite a very deep friendship with Tracy, although we've never met. So thank you again for the second buddy read that we did together. And by the way, this was a very important book for Elsa Morante because she won a very prestigious prize in Italy, the Strega Prize in 1957. And it was quite an historical achievement because she was the first woman to win this award. And I may add that it was about time because we had amazing female writers in the 20th century. So Arturo's character is one unforgettable and someone you immediately feel very protective of. He's motherless since birth, and he lives and grows up basically on his own in this beautiful and wild island of Procida, which is located close to Naples, with a father that appears only occasionally in his life. So yet this absent father for Arturo is kind of a legend in his head. He's a hero, a leader, and the protagonist of the same adventures Arturo reads in his books. He loves reading about adventures. And so the moments that he spends with his father, which he so looks forward to when he returns, are also building up some expectations of sharing a life of adventures with him. But that ideal image of his father begins to crack when he comes back to Procida with a new wife, the really young Nunzia. She's actually a minor, so quite close to Arturo's age. He refuses to think of her as a mother, as he never had any female role model in his life. And so living with his stepmother and still absent dad, because he never stops leaving the island even when he's married, will really complicate Arturo's life precisely at a very pivotal moment in his life. This is a coming of age story. The greatness of Arturo's Island lies in Elsa Morante's ability to lead us in the mind of this young protagonist. We follow his thoughts, his illusions, his emotional storms and outbursts. And we understand actually every gesture because we know where it comes from, even when they appear impulsive and sometimes contradictory. We understand him because Arturo grows up without any emotional, moral, or intellectual guidance, and he's his own life coach basically, and this often leads to unexpected actions and reactions, but the reader really has nothing to reproach him for. Our disbelief actually is directed entirely to his dad. He's too mysterious and self-absorbed, but upon a closer inspection later in the book, we'll find out some of his hypocrisies, and this will actually be quite an interesting side that will make us understand a lot about his father as well. And we also don't want to reproach Nunzia because she's really too simple and too pious to accept a life outside the norm. She's young and she's grown up being told to obey their husbands. You have to think that those were, you know, the days where women in Italy were still more submissive than what women are now. After the 70s revolution, she never rebelled against the weird behavior of her husband, who would just disappear for months. But luckily, you know, going back to Arturo, he has fire within himself. So this sort of will help him go through all the emotions, and that will really help him through these difficult times. Elsa Morante's book is so intense and poetic and passionate, depicting this original coming-of-age novel with quite some peculiar family dynamics, and also bringing to our attention a particular society stigma, which I cannot give you many details on because it would spoil, you know, if you want to read it through. And she gives such clever nuances, which critics today have stated that if she would have been more graphic, sort of hinting at this particular topic, it wouldn't be accepted by society in the 50s because it was brought up by a woman. So are you curious enough? So thank you again, Tracy, for reading this with me. I also encourage Tracy to read History by Elsa Morante, which is set during the Second World War. Another brilliant book with quite intense character as well. Coming up next, The Mountain Shadow by Gregory David Roberts. I have read this in Italian, and this is the big book sequel of Shantaram, which I read last year in English actually, but I did read the sequel in Italian. And for those who say that The Mountain Shadow is not as good as Shantaram, I have to disagree, because it was really lovely to return to the world of Lynn, the protagonist, which has been such an amazing journey to follow. I read this book as a buddy read with my Italian channel and with the same booktuber that I read Shantaram with. And we started this book in January this year, and we really couldn't let go of the character we were reading really slowly, because we weren't intrigued by the story, but because it was really hard to let go of this character who comes to India after escaping a prison in Australia. And he finds a new life and a new journey in India, and through working for the mafia, but also making great friendships. And there's a lot of philosophy. And we find all these elements in the sequel as well. We say goodbye to some of the characters. We welcome new ones. And we follow the transformation of Lynn. Lynn is a character in constant move. He's trying to develop his spirituality as well. So that's why in the book we find a lot of philosophy, of soul searching. There's a lot of love, a lot of friendships, a lot of adventures. And this book is such an entertainer. I totally adored this book, and I feel like these two books will be constant rereads, because we feel so fondly of not just the main character, Lynn, but also all the surrounding presence around him. Really unforgettable books. So I had some notes with me, but I guess that I just improvised because it just came from my heart. Next on the agenda is Ballerina by Patrick Modiano. This was my first encounter with this Nobel Prize winner author. Ballerina is a short novel set in Paris, and that's probably what drove me to it. And the narrator recalls a Paris from a few decades ago when he encountered the ballerina, and we will never know her name actually. So the narrator, who was then a young man starting his career as a writer, retains the memory of her great charm and unwavering dedication to dance, and also to her young son. She was a single mother. We also won't even know how close the narrator and the ballerina were at that time, but although the story is shrouded in a patina of time, the atmosphere is still warm and captivating. The city of Paris is portrayed so differently from what it is today. Here we notice a sleepy city, wintry, foggy, with protagonists strolling lost in thoughts and accompanied by their hopes and dreams. So in a way, even the city of Paris is a protagonist of this book. So even if we don't know much about the characters and we only see a few pictures of them through time, I was quite entranced by the story and setting. So I would definitely give a thumbs up to La Ballerina. Now I'm going to tell you about Mastro Geppetto, which is a book that's only available translated in Greek. I'm not sure why, but I have to tell you about this book because I met the author at a book fair last year, and I was so impressed with his personality. He was very humble, highly cultured, charming, extremely friendly when we did the book signing. And so I found this care and this kindness of soul in the pages of this book, which is reimagining the adventures of Pinocchio that you might know quite well. And the protagonist, however, is not the puppet turned boy, but his creator. And I really liked this idea because it reminded me of the comparison between Huckleberry Finn and the successful book by Percival Everett James that I read last year. And so we find Geppetto, the protagonist of this book. He's a naive and impoverished elderly carpenter. All he wants is to become a father, but his friends find this desire ridiculous because of his age. And they organize a very cruel prank for him. They gift him with a tree trunk. You know, he didn't have money to buy one. With that, he carves the long-awaited puppet son. So, of course, Geppetto, his dream come true, is so happy. But soon after, the prank develops, taking him into very painful and difficult situations. So the adventures of Pinocchio that we know from Collodi's classic sort of switch sides, and they become Geppetto's adventures. His experiences with the characters in Collodi's Pinocchio are slightly different, but he meets the same figures that Pinocchio does in the classic book. What transpires from this tale is, I think, that the author wants to confront us with the fact that this is not a fairy tale, it's a reality. It's a true story of a man living in the real world, a shy but courageous man, full of dreams and hopes, forced to deal with the cruelty and indifference of others, while all he wants is someone to love. And that is quite heartbreaking, in my opinion, but so poetically written. I love, 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 love this book. And here's a character I really didn't care for, Mr. Gwyn by Alessandro Baricco. So it took me halfway through the book to acclimate with Mr. Gwyn's atmosphere, because he is an unresolved protagonist, and I always get a little antsy with protagonists that, are unresolved. Anyway, Mr. Gwyn is a writer. I mean, he's not that unresolved. He actually has something in his mind. He's a famous writer, but he doesn't want to write anymore. He just wants to stop, despite what his editor, thinks. Talk about when you have too much in life and nothing has flavor, right? But anyway, he doesn't know what to do with his life, but eventually he comes up with this idea. He wants to observe potential clients for a month while they pose for him in their most vulnerable state, which is, naked, and then write a portrait of them. So he's returning to write, but not books. So he wants to privately write a portrait of some sort for potential clients. So I found myself a curious but also perplexed spectator when I learned about this idea, because I really didn't know what these portraits would consist of, right? He hires an assistant, Rebecca, who also will be his first model for free, thankfully. And at the end of the experience, Rebecca becomes his assistant, trying to procure him clients. So he starts this new career. But Rebecca's presence in the book raised my interest, as her characters had many different layers, and the reader is able to connect with her inner thoughts, while Mr. Gwyn still remains sort of a mystery. Rebecca will become quite a central presence in the final part of the story too, and will be the key to solve a surprising and unexpected mystery at the end. So overall, it wasn't a total loss, Mr. Gwyn. I still gave it 3 stars on Goodreads. The final book on this group is Silent House by Orhan Pamuk. This was a disappointment, and I abandoned this book after 140 pages. I did try my best, I have to say, and it was a double disappointment because I was so looking forward to read Orhan Pamuk for the first time. I will still give him another chance though. So Silent House is a novel centered on this elderly matriarch figure of Fatma, who lives in a rundown house, the House of Silence as it's called, near Istanbul. She's cared for by Recep, who's a hunchback housekeeper, but also the son of her belated husband from a previous marriage. Fatma is not very likable. She treats Recep with disdain and hastiness, so we start the book not liking this person. Her grandchildren come to visit her every summer, and they are the son of her also dead son. They are Farouk, a disillusioned and alcoholic historian; Nilgun, an idealistic left-wing intellectual. She's the only female of the 3 nephews. Metin, who is a teenager obsessed with the idea of becoming rich and entering Istanbul high society. Parallel to them, there is the figure of Hasan, a young impoverished nationalist who develops an ever-increasing obsession with Nilgun. As the book progresses, the atmosphere becomes more politically charged. The situation is Turkey in the 70s, and the descending violence between the left and right-wing nationalists. Besides the character of Nilgun, I found all the characters being so negative, spreading such bad energy, making me really quite uncomfortable continuing this book. I would have loved to learn more about the political situation in Turkey in the 70s, but this book really is so heavily charged that I just could not continue. I did not sympathize with the nephews, besides the female Nilgun, and they were also negative and complaining about everything about their lives and not having like any dream, something to look forward to, trying to be a bit positive. So yeah, it was really draining, and I decided to abandon it. So good thing that I'm finished with my reviews, as there is some noise coming from outside. I better say goodbye. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Looking forward to talk to you in the comments and see you back here on Uncommon Reader very soon. Take care and happy reading. Ciao.